So second year Bcom computer application third sem, and second year BA computer applications third sem Rdbms. Fourth unit already start చేసాము. So what is concurrency control and concurrency control techniques, deadlocks, locks and deadlocks, different types of locks or different types of deadlocks, and how to prevent deadlock, ఇవి మనం ఒకసారి డిస్కస్ చేద్దాము. So transactions are sequences of operations that are clustered together. Interleaving means and serially equivalent interleaving. So what is a lock and what are the deadlock and different types of deadlock techniques and recoverability from aborts అంటే ఏంటి, ఇవన్నీ కూడా మనము చెప్పుకున్నాము. సో serializability, deadlock freedom, fairness, degree of concurrency and complexity. So transactions are sequences of operations that are clustered together. So serial equivalence or serial operations example ఏంటంటే reading and writing operations. So some operations are reading and some operations are writing, and some transactions are updating on the same records. So there are many problems while we encountered. There are many types of problems encountered while we reading transactions, multiple transactions by the multiple users at the same time. So reading problems and writing problems like aborts, transaction aborts. So all these are the different types of problems. So to avoid all these things, that is called as concurrency, database concurrency or concurrency. To avoid concurrency problems, so we may use a technique called locks. So lock, what is a lock? A lock is a token that indicates that a process accesses a resource in a particular mode. So to avoid concurrency controls, in DBMS or any Rdbms applications, we may use the concept called locks. So locks is a token that indicates that a process accesses a resources in a particular mode. Means generally locks are used to note down, or locks are used to identify various processes uses various resources. Minimal lock modes are read and write. It means locking means we can lock many things like reading of database records, or reading of RDBMs, writing of databases, updation of databases, and deletion of so many locks are there, but we may use basic things are read and write. Locks are used to indicate to concurrent process the current use of the resource. So locks are used to indicate to concurrent process. Locks are used to indicate to concurrent process the current use of that resource. So generally locks are used to identify which resources are used to read and which resources are used to write, like that. So lock compatibility. Lock managers grants locks. Grant depends on the compatibility of acquisition request, and the compatibility defined in lock compatibility. Minimal lock compatibility matrix is reading and writing. So read and read write. So this is the minimal. By default, all locks are used on only two minimal concepts or two minimal operations: reading and writing. So locking conflicts. So how to conflict two different locks? Means lock request cannot be granted if incomplete locks are held by concurrent process. This is referred to as locking conflict. Approaches to handle conflicts means force requesting process to wait until conflict locks are released. So deadlock. So another important concept in these concurrency control is deadlock. So what is a deadlock? How to when deadlocks occurs, and how to avoid deadlocks in Dbms or Rdbms. So locking may lead to situations where processes are waiting for each other to release locks. So generally locks are operated on two basic operations like reading and writing. So when using multiple users by locking reading and writing operations, we generally encountered a situation called waiting stage. Waiting stage means if one transaction is released, another is waiting, and if the second transaction is executed or doing, the first one is locked, like that. So there may be a situation where like different locks and releases situations are occur. These situations are called deadlocks. So deadlock means, what is a deadlock? A deadlock is occurred, or a deadlock is created whenever multiple users or multiple situations are trying to read and trying to write the same database operations or same database records by using reading and writing operations. So these deadlocks have to be detected by the lock manager. So generally locks locks are lock and unlock means releasing lock some resource and unlock some resource are done by the on various reading and writing operations are done by the lock manager. So deadlocks have to be detected. So generally these deadlocks are detected in the Dbms or any Dbms or any Rdbms by the lock manager. Deadlocks have to be resolved by aborting one or several of the processes involved. So what is a deadlock? A deadlock is a situation or a special situation where processes, where different processes or different users are trying to access the same data or information or same table at the same time. So there will be a race, is created among them, who will read first and who will write first the same record at the same time. That situation is called as deadlock. So the solution is the basic or simple solution to avoid or to avoid deadlock is to release locks. So deadlocks have to be detected by the lock manager, and the deadlocks have to be resolved by aborting one or several of the processes involved. So how to avoid or how to generally how to avoid deadlocks or how to remove deadlocks in any Dbms or Rdbms means, generally first of all we may find out the deadlocks. Generally deadlocks are found by these lock managers. After founding, deadlocks have to be released. Deadlocks have to be released by the Dbms or Rdbms engine. So deadlocks have to be resolved by aborting one or more several of the processes in one. So how to remove deadlocks means we simply resolve it by aborting, or aborting means cancelling. Aborting or cancelling one or more several processes of the involved. This requires to undo all the actions that these processes have done. So this requires to undo all the actions. So how to avoid or how to remove deadlocks means this requires to undo all the actions that resolve that these processes have done. Means undo means redo the same thing, redo the same transaction. By doing the same transaction again and again, these deadlocks are generally removed. So locking, we may continue with the locking also. So processes acquire locks before they access shared resources and release locks afterwards. And two-phase locking. Processes do not acquire locks once they have released a lock. Strict two-phase locking means a transaction does not release any of its locks until after it terminated. A typical 2PL means two-phase locking profile of a process means number of locks held by process and time. So processes acquire locks before they access shared resources and release locks afterwards. So the first thing is, first of all, we may set some locks before accessing some shared resources or any accessing some resources, and after sharing, after we get the resources, we may simply release the locks. That is a simple solution. Second algorithm is two-phase locking. What is two-phase locking? Processes do not acquire locks once they have released a lock. Means in the two-phase locking, whenever when a process is locked or when a resource is locked, it doesn't allow any further or new locks to be processed. That is a two-phase processing. So example means apply two-phase locking protocol to the schedules below by adding statements like slock A, xlock, and lock. Slock stands for shared lock, example read lock. Xlock stands for exclusive lock, example write lock. So here we are taking T1 and T2. T1 is for transaction 1 and T2 for transaction 2. T1 means writing. So T1 transaction 1 is doing some write operations or writing on some table A, whereas T2 is idle. Again in the next step, T1 is idle, then T2 is writing something on the same table A. Again in the third time slice, transaction 1 is writing something on B resource or B table, while T2 is idle. Keep idle. Next, again in the fourth time or fourth transaction, fourth time slot, T1 is idle, whereas T2 writes something on table B. Here T1 and T2 are two transactions, and what are operations? Writing and reading are basic operations on locks. Writing and reading are basic operations generally applied on locks. Other operations are also there: writing, reading, rewrite, update, delete, like that. And A and B are two resources. A and B are two resources means two tables or something. So there are different. S lock means share lock, and X lock means exclusive lock. That is write lock. Here is another example or a solution. So we may continue in the next class.